Thank you. Let's begin with our question and answer session. We have the first participant from Universidad Autónoma de Chihuahua, UACH, Chihuahua, Mexico, and the question is, I find it quite interesting that the three major sources of disruption that you propose, namely the impacts of increasing globalization, technological innovation, and changing populations, are political changes and new legislation such as the energy and educational reforms of 2014 in Mexico a result of one or more of these sources?
All three of these disruptors influence countries to make political and legislative changes. Certainly, countries learn from other countries such that they see what other countries implement to deal with their own problems, and then are influenced to adopt some of those ideas for themselves. Globalization exposes people to new ideas and raises expectations so that politicians and governments are pressured by their citizens to improve their living and economic situations. And, for example, in terms of the things you mentioned, energy and educational reforms, new technological ideas make energy reforms possible, and large young populations almost force countries with that problem to put additional resources into education and to seek ideas from other countries as to how to educate a much larger population.
Thank you. We have a second participant from B.F. Almeida and Associates in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And the question is, given that poor and emerging nations have younger populations than developed economies, do you think that issues like gender equality and population diversity in general will become disruptors of traditions and workplace behavior around the world?
It seems to me that issues like diversity and gender equality are creating disruption, even maybe particularly in developed countries. Every country will need to provide workplace protections for these groups. The positive side of this may be that since the population of the world is so incredibly diverse, countries and companies that deal quickly and effectively with acceptance of diversity may find themselves more productive, better able to deal with diverse customers and workforces, and thus gain competitive advantage in their global dealings.
Thank you again. We have another participant from Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, UNAM, Cuautitlán, Mexico, and the question is, what do you think will be the role of the English language as a work skill, not as a second language, but workplace language around the world?
In a way, it embarrasses me to say this, but the reality is that global firms need a common language so everyone can communicate without difficulty or error. And as the linkages become ever broader, a common language becomes ever more critical. Speaking and negotiating cross borders with colleagues, customers, clients, suppliers, researchers, consultants, etc., makes the common language increasingly necessary. So for many reasons, the language most being used has become and will continue to be English. Any individual that wants to participate in the global economy will need to gain fluency in English. This is not to say that at the local level and at the diplomatic level, local languages will not be used. Thus, being fluent in two or more languages will be a powerful skill.
Thank you for your response. Our next participant is from St. Thomas Global Institute in Santo Domingo, República Dominica, and the question is, what is the impact of culture in the interesting concept of functional intelligence?
Good question. Behaviors and values that differ so much among countries and regions make communication, such as cross-border negotiations, exceedingly difficult. Functionally intelligent managers must assign priority to learning about people's differences so that they are less likely to embarrass themselves or the people they are dealing with, and less likely to alienate them. In the simplest of terms, managers need to learn the basic protocols of things like greetings, or issues like gift giving, drinking, eating style, degree of formality, use of names, role of women, degree of physicality and touching, etc. Making a mistake can end a relationship. And not understanding such differences can lead to incredible difficulties in being functionally intelligent and using listening for understanding. But understanding such differences can help in dealing with problems and disruptions.
Thank you again for your response. Our next participant is from Comisión Federal de Electricidad, CFE, Subdirección de Distribución in Mexico City, Mexico. And the question is, of the 8 accelerators you describe in your fine presentation, the first one, creating a sense of urgency, seems to be a most difficult one in a large bureaucratic organization where the status quo reigns. What recommendations can you give to tackle this challenge, which also oftentimes is tied to cultural attitudes?
I think the key to creating a sense of urgency around trying to solve a problem or responding to a negative or positive disruption is to first make sure you thoroughly understand the disruption, which may begin with gathering the big data that provides a foundation for selling the problem and for selling an innovative solution. Then the champion, or as I mentioned from Peter Drucker, the egomaniac on a mission, that is, the person who perceives the disruption and is motivated to do something about it, must communicate, communicate, communicate. This needs to be done in every way possible, using every media and with priority and frequent face-to-face meetings. The champion must show the urgency and passion of which he or she is trying to convince others. And as other people are convinced and jump on the wagon, the urgency will grow and others will want to join the project.
Thank you for your response. Our next question is from Tianjin College of Commerce, TCC, in Tianjin, China. Thank you also for participating in this program. The question is, I'm excited to learn of the various key skills and competencies of functional intelligence, which you describe, particularly that of understanding and taking advantage of human networks personally and professionally. Do you recommend LinkedIn as a valuable professional network?
Even though I don't use my personal LinkedIn account extensively myself, maintaining these linkages are critical for putting out information and for seeking information. Access to and use of social media are particularly important and useful to young people, which is another reason why the rest of us need to understand them and to use them. One of the most important uses of social media, like LinkedIn, is collaboration. Today, this is one of the most important personal skills. It gives you access to a much wider set of ideas and perspectives, and since so many people rely on media like LinkedIn for that purpose, and for things like job hunting, having large and active networks are crucial to performance today. And increasingly, they are important to people in organizations for their jobs, particularly in areas like human resources, for things like recruiting.